Well, let's get a contra-view to that. Well, I imagine it's going to be a contra-view to that from Ruthie Blum, who is former advisor at the office of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, now a columnist and senior contributing editor at the news agency JNS. Ruthie, very good evening to you. David Lammy, our Foreign Secretary, being, I would say, quite brutal in the use of his language today, not something we've seen before. How significant a development is this?
Well, thank you for having me, Iain. And you're right that this is a counterpoint to your previous guest. I don't think that David Lammy's tone is the problem. I think it's the content of his words. It's, yes, a terrible shame that allies such as Britain, France, and Canada, and others have turned against Israel right now, especially as the war is hopefully nearing a conclusion. And why am I saying that? It is true that the situation in Gaza is dire, though there is a dispute about whether there's actual famine there. The issue of the humanitarian aid is part of the strategy of war, not to ethnically cleanse Gaza, but yes, to cleanse it of Hamas.
Well, hang on a minute, because that word was used by, was it the Israeli Foreign Secretary actually used that word? So you can't just dismiss it like that.
We use the word cleanse in relation to clearing out the terrorists, the jihadis, not the babies. Okay, that is not the word cleanse, yes, is used in Hebrew. It's even partly a military term when you're clearing out an area, a terrorist base. Okay. Now,
but this was interpreted by the way it's been written up, and and this is in respectable publications, not anti-Israel publications. It's been written up as him wanting to cleanse Gaza of Palestinian people.
No, that actually is not true. That is, Prime Minister Netanyahu has never said such a thing, and it is true that President Trump's proposed plan for Gaza includes relocating Gazans to other countries. That's not cleansing them, not killing them. It's relocating them to places where they can have a better life and homes and not live in rubble. Now, here's the problem. War is hell, as we know. And this war is particularly difficult because the enemy, it's not a country. The enemy is a terrorist organization, or several, by the way. It's not only Hamas in Gaza, there's also Islamic Jihad and Fatah. But the problem here has been that Hamas, of course, embeds itself within civilian areas. Israel has been extremely careful about that, as careful as possible, by warning civilians to get out of the way whenever the IDF strikes. Also by even endangering IDF soldiers, who have to be extremely careful on two counts. One, not to kill civilians in Gaza, and two, not to kill hostages by accident. So,
I'm sorry, again, I have to pick you up on that, because sure. we see pictures every day of whole communities destroyed. Not the odd building that could have contained a terrorist. Literally, every building has been destroyed. That is not targeting, is it?
No, well, you see, those places that are completely destroyed, the population was warned to move, given locations to move to. And you're right that those places look completely destroyed. They are completely destroyed. But what you forget to point out is that those destroyed buildings were complete terrorist bases. There were weapons, rocket launchers. Well, all of the ones that Israel targeted, yes, under children's bedrooms, under cribs, everywhere, tunnel leading into people's homes. There is plenty of footage of it. The IDF has it and releases it all the time. Now, what you also don't see is that there are parts of Gaza where new restaurants are opening up and ice cream stores and all that. It is true that we are seeing photos out of there, but what I'm trying to point out is this war could have ended on October 8th, 2023, if Hamas had just released the hostages and put down its weapons.
Well, that is true, but we know that didn't happen. Can we just turn to the question of aid? Because, as I understand it, over the last 24 hours, 9 trucks have been allowed into Gaza. There are hundreds of trucks waiting to go in with aid. Now, I understand the argument that Hamas have intercepted a lot of the aid and used it for their own methods. But it's got to the point, it seems, according to the UN, that we are at a situation where a famine is about to break out. 14,000 babies, they say, are at risk of dying over the next 48 hours. And still the trucks aren't really allowed in to the degree that they need to be with medical supplies and food.
Okay, so two things I have to say to that. This isn't just that they're merely not being allowed. There was a decision made as part of the war strategy, since Hamas wasn't budging on its insistence on remaining in power, etc., that there was going to be, we're trying to sort of strangle Hamas. And one way is militarily. The other way is through negotiations brokered by Qatar and Egypt, and now the United States, of course, to release the hostages and to at least, to as many as possible, at least. And part of the recent strategy was to withhold the aid. And now, because the United States has requested of Israel that it at least give aid to the people who need it, Israel reconsidered, and by the way, much to the dismay of many of the families of the hostages who are saying that we are feeding the enemy and that is going to make it even harder to return the hostages. But what I want to say about the aid is that wasn't just, this was a purposeful part of the war plan, and that this aid, rather than, and what we're doing here is having the army monitor who can get to the aid stations. And yes, there's
why don't you let journalists into Gaza to actually monitor where this aid is going? Because that would be a very simple way. If Hamas are intercepting it all, or some 80% of it, which is the rumour, or certainly being claimed by the IDF, then let journalists in, let them see it for themselves and report it. Because a war strategy is all very well and good, but part of a war strategy surely has to be about winning hearts and minds as well as killing people. And Israel, to those of us who have supported Israel right from the start of this on October the 7th, we feel hung out to dry at the moment. And it's the Israeli government that is doing that, because I can't sit here and defend to my listeners the effective banning of aid to people who need it. I want to back Israel. I understand the effects of October the 7th, but you don't have to make it hard for us.
No, I understand that it's very hard seeing those pictures out of Gaza, because ironically, Israel is not good at propaganda, or what we call hasbara, explaining our position. We could, on the other hand, be filming every day the atrocities the Hamas commits, and we don't do that. But what I wanted to say about the aid is that this time the strategy is to prevent Hamas from stealing it by monitoring it. Now, when you said journalists aren't allowed, that's not true. It is true that journalists have been allowed into Gaza since the beginning of the war, accompanied by IDF spokespeople and things like that, because it's a dangerous war zone. But the aid that is going in now, first of all, it isn't just Israel saying that the aid was stolen by Hamas. It's Gazans saying it.
No, and I'm not doubting that, but there are ways of ensuring that doesn't happen. And if Israel wants to stop being accused of war crimes and genocide, then whatever strategy it's following, it needs to change it.
Well, first of all, that is the new policy starting a few days ago, much to the dismay, I have to add, many Israelis, including in Netanyahu's coalition and among citizens, have said that this is going to be a disaster because they don't believe it won't get into Hamas's hands. And the government...
Listen,
yes,
Ruthie, we're going to have to stop because I'm 10 minutes late for going to a break, and I'd love to continue. But thank you very much indeed for joining us. That's Ruthie Blum from the news agency JNS.